Hey everyone, I'm Alec and welcome to a special edition of MASL Midweek that is coming to you from quarantine thanks to that thing that, well, apparently YouTube doesn't like us to mention, so we won't say its name, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. Things are certainly a little bit weird right now, but hey, I've got a desk now and a tablet that has notes on it, so I'm doing all right. And I thought this would be a fun time that, since we are all currently separated, to talk about a time that we will all come together, which is of course for a hypothetical MASL All-Star game. Now, I think that a lot of you would agree with me that the league is not really in a position right now to actually have an all-star game, not just because of the current events, but just because of where the league is standing. But hey, we can still dream. So what I'm going to do is go through all 17 teams in the league and say why I think they should host an all-star game and why I think they should not host an all-star game. And then at the end of the video, I will tell you which team I think should host the first ever MASL All-Star game. Now, since I imagine this game being like other All-Star games, where there's a few days of fun and festivities surrounding the game itself, I have a few criteria that I will loosely be using to judge every team. Those criteria include the geographic location of the team, the history of arena soccer in that city, the team's arena, where it is, its size, and whatnot, other nearby attractions, and of course, that team's fan base. And that's why I have the notes. So without further ado, let's start with my hometown team, the Baltimore Blast. Now I know a lot of you are probably thinking about the Blast's field size, but I'm not going to go there, but I am going to talk about their arena. It's a beautiful arena, but it was built for basketball. And in order for an arena soccer field to fit in there, they have to fold in about half of the seats in the arena, which just feels wonky to me. And after you do that, there's still a good chunk of seats in the arena that have obstructed views. So I'm not the biggest fan of that arena for indoor soccer. Not only that, but the arena is also not in the city of Baltimore, it's in Towson, which is just a little bit north of the city. But things are not all bad for Baltimore. The Blast are of course one of the most storied franchises in the league, and Baltimore itself has some really nice attractions, such as the Inner Harbor, Fort McHenry, the National Aquarium, and of course, and perhaps most importantly, seafood. You know, I really like this ball, but it just feels like there's something missing from it. You know what? Yeah, that did the trick. Next up, we'll move on to the Florida Tropics, who, unlike the Blast, have an arena that seems very well set up for arena soccer. Now, I've never been there myself, but looking at the broadcasts online, it seems like the overall seating arrangement and the size of that arena is perfect for arena soccer in this day and age. On top of that, they are located in sunny Florida, which during the cold season of the MASL might be a nice little reprieve for the fans up north, and Florida does have a lot of attractions in it. The Tropics are not super close to any of those attractions, but they're close enough. On the downside for Florida, they are a relatively new franchise with not a lot of history behind them, and they are in Florida, so they are far from being centrally located. Moving on to the Harrisburg Heat, they've got an arena that, size-wise at least, would be a good fit for the All-Star game, and while the Heat are not the most storied team in the league, they certainly have some good history behind them. On top of that, Harrisburg has some very pretty spots in it, including some great views of the Susquehanna River. However, Harrisburg is also not centrally located, and the arena, while good size-wise, I've been there several times, and I'm sure there's a more diplomatic way of saying this, but it feels like a barn. You got me. You got me. You got me. Ew. Sub. The Rochester Lancers have a passionate fan base and ownership group, which would certainly help them make a compelling case to host the All-Star game. On top of that, they're not that far from some pretty neat attractions, such as Niagara Falls, and they're in Western New York, so of course, there's gonna be some pretty good chicken wings. But Rochester's arena is kind of small for the All-Star game, and it's not actually located in Rochester. The Kansas City Comets seem to have been experiencing a bit of a weakening fan base over the past couple of years. At least they've been having fewer fans at their games than they did 4 or 5 years ago. On top of that, Kansas City's arena is not actually in Kansas City, which, like Rochester and Baltimore, hurts their chances, at least in my book. But the arena that they do have is absolutely gorgeous, at least from what I can tell watching it online, and Kansas City has a lot of history behind it in relation to arena soccer. On top of all of that, Kansas City is very centrally located, and it has lots of neat cultural elements to it, such as jazz and barbecue. In case you couldn't tell, food is pretty much the sixth criterion for me. Next up, we have the Milwaukee Wave, who have a lot going for them. They're a historic franchise that has a strong fan base. They play in a good-sized arena. They're relatively centrally located, and of course, beer. I don't really have many downsides for Milwaukee, other than the fact that I don't really think about Milwaukee as a very touristy city, but really I'm just saying that because I have to have some downside for them. Then we have the Orlando Seawolves that are kind of the same deal as the Florida Tropics. They're in a good-sized arena, they're in Florida, which is nice and warm, and they're even closer to some of the major attractions in Florida than the Tropics are, so they've got that going for them. But of course, the elephant in the room with the Seawolves is their fan base, which is far from good. Alright guys, I bet if we all work together, we can convince the MASL to have their All-Star game right here in Orlando. Who's with me? Oh yeah. That's right. St. Louis Ambush are another team that have a lot going for them to host an All-Star game. They play in a good-sized arena. They are centrally located. St. Louis has some neat sightseeing, such as the St. Louis Arch, and of course, like Kansas City, they've got some good barbecue. However, also like Kansas City, they've got an arena that is not in the actual city of St. Louis, which, in my book, hurts their chances. And I know this is a bit contrived, but St. Louis just hosted the NHL All-Star Game, and I think we should maybe spread our All-Star Games out a little bit. Then finally, for our Eastern Conference teams, we have Utica City FC. This team has an incredibly passionate fan base, and they play in an arena that, to me, is perfect for arena soccer. So they've got all of that going for them. On top of that, beer. But on the downside, Utica is not centrally located, and it is a pretty small city that, well, forgive my ignorance, but I don't know what people do in Utica. Moving out west, we're going to start with a two-team special here, the Dallas Sidekicks and the Mesquite Outlaws. These two teams share a very similar geographic area, and I think it would make sense for them to pool their resources together and make one awesome All-Star game. That's actually one of the biggest pluses that I have here. You've got two teams that could work together for this. Now, obviously, only one of the arenas would actually host the game, and while both of the arenas they have are a decent size for an All-Star game, I would lean towards hosting it at the Allen Event Center because, well, they have seats and not bleachers. On top of that, Dallas is a big city with a lot of attractions, including some sports-related attractions such as AT&T Stadium. Kind of like Milwaukee, I'm having a tough time thinking of some legitimate downsides to Dallas and Mesquite hosting. The one that kind of pops into my head that is really not that big of a deal is the fact that there is some tension between the fan base of the Sidekicks and the team itself. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, a lot of the Sidekicks fans have actually gravitated towards the Outlaws as their new team of choice. I'm not sure if that would get in the way of a successful All-Star game, but I had to have a con in there. Next up, we have Flash de Monterrey in nice and warm Mexico. They have the same benefits as the two Florida teams, and on top of that, the Flash are one of the league's premier franchises. They're a competitive team year in and year out, usually more than a competitive team, usually a dominant team year in and year out. And that seems like the type of thing that you might want to showcase in an All-Star game. But on the downside, and this might not be an issue in the future, but this past season they had some weird arena availability. They played a lot of their games on Monday nights, and that would not be an ideal night for an All-Star game. So if that continues into the future, that would hurt their chances of an All-Star game. But beyond that, they've got a lot of positives going for them. The Ontario Fury are another team with a gorgeous arena that would be a great spot to host an MASL All-Star game. They are also located very close to Los Angeles and Anaheim, which both have some great attractions in them. However, Ontario, they are not centrally located, and like St. Louis, they just had an All-Star game not that long ago. Not the NHL, but the AHL had their All-Star game there, which, kind of goes against my spread out the All-Star games mentality. Which brings up another heavy hitter in this competition, the San Diego Sockers. This is one of the most storied franchises in arena soccer. They also play in a gorgeous arena, and they are in San Diego, which of course is a beautiful city and a place that I'm sure a lot of people would want to visit. But the big downside to San Diego is its location. The city is far from being centrally located. We'll now head down the coast to Solis de Sonora, another team that plays in a nice and warm climate, and they play in an arena that I think looks like a fantastic place to watch an arena soccer game. Again, like a lot of these arenas, I haven't actually been there, but from what I can tell watching the games online, I think the seating arrangement looks very conducive to a good arena soccer watching experience. The downside to Sonora is the same as it is for San Diego. They are far from being centrally located. And on top of that, the fan support and the attendance in Sonora seems like it's taken a bit of a dive since the team returned from their hiatus this past season. Alright, we are now in the home stretch. Let's talk about the Tacoma Stars. This team is nestled in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, which I think would be a fantastic surrounding for an arena soccer all-star game. On top of that, there are plenty of attractions within the Pacific Northwest. To be honest, I can't say too much about Tacoma itself, but Tacoma is not that far from Seattle, and there is a ton of great things to check out in Seattle. As a matter of fact, sometimes I wish the Stars were a team based out of Seattle instead. On second thought, never mind. Tacoma's fine. Unfortunately for the Stars, like our last couple teams, they are far from being centrally located, and on top of that, their arena is not actually in the city of Tacoma, which, as you all know by now, is a bit of a minus for me. Which of course brings us to our last team, the Turlock Cal Express. Now I'm sure many of you can think of a million reasons why this team should not host an all-star game, including the small city that they play in, and their small arena that is less of an arena and more of a rec center. Here. Where did this come from?
It's us from POP.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Here you go, kids. Have fun. But to me, that is kind of what the charm of this team is, and one of the reasons that I support having them in the league. On top of that, they are one of the longest tenured teams currently in the league, which has got to count for something, right? And with that, we have now reached the time where I'm going to reveal my pick to host the first ever MASL All-Star Game. But before I do that, I want to encourage you to give me your thoughts. Obviously, a lot of the stuff I said today is completely opinion-based, and I probably got a lot of stuff wrong, not only my opinions, but maybe some of my facts as well. I didn't do a ton of research for this video. It was really meant to be more fun than anything, so I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions about where an MASL All-Star Game would be hosted if such a thing actually existed. Which brings us to the big reveal. The team that I would have host the first ever MASL All-Star Game is the San Diego Sockers. While this team is not centrally located, they have so many good things going for them, including playing in a beautiful arena that is in a beautiful city, and they've got a ton of history behind them, including being the most tenured team in the league. So to me, they are a natural choice to host the first ever MASL All-Star Game. And with that, I'm going to wrap this video up, but as I said, make sure you give me your thoughts about where you would host an MASL All-Star Game. And while you're at it, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. If this video goes well, I might make some more of these quarantine videos. That's still to be determined, but the possibility certainly exists, so make sure you keep an eye out for those. Additionally, make sure you stay safe, stay healthy, make responsible decisions, and I will see you next time.